Well, after an extended absence, we are back. I am Patrick Finley, along with Stephen Harris. Stephen, I think last week you were on your deathbed, right?
It kind of felt that way a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
I
got
think we texted a couple times about the show towards the end of or the beginning of last week about let's recap Monaco Monday night. You were 1 foot in the grave, and then on Tuesday night, you were 2 feet in the grave and holding
yes.
on by a handhold at the top. And
But
luckily, you made a turnaround.
yeah, I'm about 90% back, I think, at this point. Still got a little bit in the
That's
nasal area, but it is it is what it
yeah, I
is.
hear it. I hear it. Yeah, I hear it a little bit, but
Right?
it's all good, man. Welcome back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think one we had the delay of Imola due to the flooding
Hmm.
in Italy, and then last week we just skipped a week. Just couldn't find another time to do it, so we punted to this week. And I, Stephen, honestly, I think our content is about the same as what it would be, even if we did the show last week.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
But just yeah, yeah, it's you and I were talking about this before we jumped on here, and it just seems like there is not much going on around the paddock this year. Like last year, there was all the talk,
Mhm.
especially once we got towards Singapore, especially about the cap, or even a couple weeks before. Um, there were driver rumors. There were drivers that were, DeVries came in and raced at Monza last year and did well,
Mhm.
and so that sparked a bunch of rumors. But this year, I mean, it just seems like I mean, one, the racing on the track has not been anything noteworthy.
No.
The off off track action, there's just nothing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a very strange year for Formula One, and I think you even hit the nail on the head early on this season when you had said that this year looks like it's going to be the litmus test for all the new Formula One fans coming in, because it really looked like from the beginning that Red Bull was just out ahead of everybody else by quite a bit, and that typically just doesn't provide great content or great interest when you kind of already know that Max Verstappen's going to win a race, and it's just seeing who can come in second almost in a sense. So yeah, I think you were right on that when you called that. You called that early on this season, really. So it feels
Well,
that way.
and even let's let's say this, even the litmus test, right, about the on track action.
Mm,
I say even if you have this racing action last year, I think you still have a little bit of intrigue with all the storylines that were playing out on the side, right, last year. And
yeah.
so I think that would have kept fans engaged last year, right? If
Hmm.
we were going through the same type on track action, or this year, right? Like if we had those storylines kind of playing out, week to week. But you know, it's almost like you're having to, all right, you know, let's find something to talk about, and
Yeah.
there's just not a lot. Even I mean, I saw today that Bridgestone is thinking about coming back and making a bid, but in the end, that doesn't really do a lot for the racing because they're just going to go with one sole tire supplier. So it's not like they're
Hmm.
going with two tire suppliers where you have tire wars like you had back in the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s. You're not going to have that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
but but kind of going into that, I mean, I think one of the storylines that has seemingly played itself out over the last 2 weeks. And I know you sent the group text a message about Ferrari going to offer Lewis Hamilton, 50 million.
Hmm.
I think it was 80. I think it was actually 80 million American dollars to jump
Oh.
over and yeah, and drive for them. And I want to get your thoughts on that. Do you think? I mean, one, we've not seen a contract. He's
Hmm.
not technically signed yet. Nothing's official. You think there's any way in the world that Lewis Hamilton leaves Mercedes?
Um, I feel like there's definitely like that established loyalty type of talk that Hamilton and Toto Wolff kind of seem to have as far as with Mercedes and kind of like they kind of seem to have that type of a bond. But I would also say that I think we've seen fractures within that bond over the last couple years. So I think I honestly would say I could really see it happening next year. Maybe I'm putting my tinfoil hat on, just let's create some scenarios with it here. But like think about it. So you have Mercedes, who's gone backwards the last couple of years as far as their car goes. They're not really a championship contender. They're maybe, second place contender at this point. So they've taken a step back. You think about what they are. I think Hamilton's making what 45 million a year, something like that, with them right now. I don't see it how they would necessarily give him a raise, but I would see how they could pull it back just because he's getting older, hasn't contended for a championship in a couple of years, where Ferrari could offer him a lot more money. Um, So the money factor could be there where Ferrari could pay him more. And then also on top of that too, Ferrari has taken a step back this year with bringing in Fred as the team principal. Like there's going to be some heat on him at some point in time because he took a second place team with a second place driver in Leclerc, and they're nowhere near that. So here he's come in. First year has not been anywhere near that level. So he's kind of got to change the narrative or give the team a hope for the future. And what better to bring in Lewis Hamilton as a star driver, saying, "Hey, we're building this team to take it to a future." Hamilton's the right guy to have because of all of his experience. He can help craft and shape this team into a championship type team that he has been with Mercedes and McLaren. So I don't know. I'll just go out there and say I think there's a very real possibility that it could happen because I think it kind of works on all the sides. I guess it's how I kind of see it. So um, I don't know. I think we could very easily see Lewis Hamilton, and also not only is it more money for Lewis Hamilton, but also if he does go to Ferrari and wins a championship, I mean he's the undisputed greatest of all time. Like there's no more conversation as to who the greatest of all time is. So that's kind of where my thoughts are. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, I think it's one thing to offer him, right? Like offer him the world to go. I mean, Fred can pull all the tricks he wants, but you got to also remember, Fred is still bound by the salary cap, or the cap. He can only go to a certain amount. I mean, because driver salaries do fall into that cap, and so there's only a limit of where they can go with that. So you think about, I mean, how much do they, how much are they going to, suffer for giving him X and then having to cut back in other areas?
Hmm.
So that's one thought. But I, I'm kind of like you. The only reason I could possibly see it is Lewis was a McLaren brought up. He came to their whole junior ranks, right?
Hmm.
He was brought in under Ron Dennis. Ron Dennis saw him uh, come in, mature, win a championship at McLaren, and then left and um, went over to Mercedes. No one ever thought he would have left McLaren, but he left
Mm,
to go to Mercedes to build that team over there. So I do think there is, but he was also going to work with Ross Brawn at the time, who was still at Mercedes.
mm-hmm,
Toto wasn't the name that Toto is now, right? Toto, 2013, Toto bought into that team for like $33 million.
mm-hmm.
Or no, $50 million for 33% is what Toto bought in. So I don't know. I think you never say never, but
Right.
I don't foresee him going to. I think Mercedes is still a top tier team.
Mm-hmm.
They are better than Ferrari.
Yes, I'd agree.
They are going to be better than Ferrari next year, and I just don't see him making the jump over to say I'm going to do that because still Leclerc is still going to be the Ferrari king. He's their long-term plan. Lewis short term. Do you talk to Leclerc and say, hey, take a couple years behind Lewis and maybe learn or I don't know. But one, I don't see Lewis at this point. I don't see Lewis leaving his career to jump over to Ferrari.
I guess time will
That's
tell.
just what. Yeah, yeah. Time will tell, and I think what we've heard is there will be an announcement this week about the contract.
Mm-hmm.
George signed a new contract as of yesterday. Um, but in other news, there's also some rumors about Haas, and obviously with Alfa Romeo, they will have a new uh, with Audi coming over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they Alfa Romeo will no longer be partnered up with Sauber. Uh, that's kind of the team, Peter Sauber and his team there. And so Alfa Romeo is still out there. Is there a possibility that Haas will sign a new title sponsor in Alfa Romeo? Because Haas is a Ferrari link, Ferrari team.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it
Alfa
makes
Romeo
sense.
wants to remain relevant.
Yeah. I mean, and it makes sense just kind of given that one connection of, it being Ferrari engines that they both share and everything. And given that Audi's coming in, obviously Audi's not going to partner with Alfa Romeo. So they're kind of left in a place where if they want to stay in, there's really not a lot of other opportunities. I mean,
Mhm.
Williams, but I don't really see them going that direction at this point because
Yeah,
they were linked with Porsche even at one point even. So
yeah,
I think that I mean that of course fell through. It was just rumors at that point, but yeah, I think Haas makes a lot of sense for a partnership there. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I don't know what do you think, Patrick?
yeah. I think it's a highly possibility. I think that would interject a lot of life into that team. They've really
Hmm.
struggled over the last couple of years, especially from a title sponsorship. I mean, I know they got MoneyGram on this year, and I mean that's a valuable partnership. I think that they could probably do something between the two, keep MoneyGram, as a sponsor, and then bring in Alfa Romeo for the title sponsor. I think that would be, that's two, I would say that's two high profile sponsorships that they haven't had in the last
Hmm.
couple of years. So yeah, I definitely think that. So as we're talking about teams and drivers and just all the different kind of motions that are going on right now within, rumor mill as far as sponsorships and any potential driver changes. What do you think about drivers on the hot seat this year? I mean, obviously the racing has, we'll talk about that here in a minute, but just from an overall standpoint, who do you see as being on the hot seat? Like, they're probably not coming back next year.
Yeah, I think one of them we have on there is Joe Ganyu, and I don't really know that he's. I don't know if he's just not really shown a lot, and then not to mention the team itself is Alfa Romeo,
Yeah,
which is
in
turning into
flux. Yeah,
Audi. So, I think that's probably one of the guys that will probably be gone. Unfortunately, I guess I don't wish for anybody to lose their seat, but I don't really see him coming back. I think Yuki was one that at the beginning of the season, I think we were all like, yeah, he's just got
this is
he
it.
got
Yeah, this is
lucky,
this is this season. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So, but he's kind of really shown up and driven pretty well, especially considering what DeVries' teammate has been doing. So, he's really
yeah.
way out in front of DeVries, and um, I think DeVries would be safe. I just don't think anybody, especially AlphaTauri, is looking to just one and done anybody. Um, so I would say Yuki's probably maybe on a little bit of a hotter seat than DeVries. I also
Yeah, but
wonder.
Yuki's been a little bit better this year, though.
Hmm.
He's definitely improved better than what I think some of the expectations were coming in on the season. He's definitely
Hmm.
outperformed DeVries.
Hmm.
Um, I would think the same thing. I don't think AlphaTauri is, well, I take that back. I mean, they did it with Rossi. When they were Toro Rosso, they brought in
Hmm.
Rossi for a couple of races and they're like, all right, didn't really give him a good shot, which was disappointing. But I don't know. I think DeVries really has to get some results, or there's going to be talk, especially with a Daniel Ricciardo that's in the Red Bull camp. I mean,
True.
that's
Yeah.
always, and I know we've kind of joked about it on the text thread that Yuki was, you know, Checo was going down to
Yeah.
Toro Rosso or AlphaTauri and and yeah,
Yuki was
and
coming up.
if I yeah, Yuki was going up and Checo was going down, and then DeVries was out and
Yes.
Ricardo was in.
Yeah. Hey, just a
I
whole
don't, I
shakeup
don't,
from Red
yeah,
Bull.
nothing's happening like that. But I could see Nick Bryce going out and a Ricardo coming in if Ricardo wants a seat like that.
Mm,
But
yeah.
the, I kind of put a question mark there at the end, Stephen, of a surprise, right? Like
Hmm.
who's one that may be kind of lurking on the edge of being on the hot seat that you might not expect.
Um, I would maybe say Carlos Sainz, just kind of,
Smooth operator?
yeah. I don't know. I feel like since Ferrari's taken that step back, like they may have to make that move. Like I said with Hamilton before, like not saying it's him, but I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. I'm trying to think of the bigger name that would be hot seat. He's the one that kind of jumps out to me. I don't feel like Checo's on the hot seat at this point because I think that I don't I think in a sense he's kind of putting himself in the position where he's not necessarily on a hot seat because he's not competing with Max, but he's not hurting the team enough to where they're P2 in the constructors type of thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Yeah, I
he's
don't
kind of,
think yeah, I don't see Checo being there. Signs if Ferrari was performing better,
true. Hmm.
I might go out on that limb with you, but with Ferrari not being, I mean, you got to think about who actually missed Q2 for the last two
Yeah.
races, and that's Leclerc,
Oh, that's
right?
right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't honestly, I don't see really any of the big three making any moves. I don't see Aston making any moves away from Alonso and Stroll. I mean, Stroll we know has a lifetime contract as long as his
Yeah.
daddy owns the company. But the one that I kind of thought about, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, is what about K Mag?
I could see that. I feel like Nico has kind of come in and one season kind of gotten maybe like I'm trying to think of how to best say this. I wouldn't say he's necessarily been significantly better, but I think his peaks have been higher, I guess,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that makes sense. So like if I had one lap, one lap qualifying, I would trust Nico over K Mag, and K Mag just I don't know, he just kind of disappears in some of these races, and I mean, granted, it's Haas, so it's not really been a great season either as far as car performance goes and stuff. So, but yeah, I could see that one being a hot seat. Which I mean, we'd even talked about Daniel rumors of Daniel Ricciardo possibly going there with Haas earlier this season. So,
yeah. I
yeah,
that one's hard for me to buy in on.
right, yeah.
Especially
Like I said, it's
yeah,
just a rumor at that point, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I agree with you on the peaks and the valleys. I mean, it seems like K Mag has just not really. There's not been much performance out of K Mag, just
hmm
in general. And he came in, did a great job filling in, especially last year after all the things that happened through the Russian, um, the the exiles of the Russians.
yeah,
Um, but I just don't know if he's. It just doesn't seem like he's all there
right,
or all
yeah,
in, all in. Not all there. That gives a different connotation.
right.
But yeah, it just
Patrick thinks you're
not sure
stupid.
that he's. Let's not go there.
No,
Let's not go there.
it's just a joke. No.
But yeah, no, I think it's I think he's in a different phase of life now.
Yeah, it could be,
Maybe,
and
maybe
also
I don't know.
maybe just a level of does he have the pure talent really in the sense like I don't know
Yeah,
necessarily if he has quite shown that ever really in his career. If he's kind of shown that he can really take a car to the next level or whatever, so that could play into it as well.
yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah,
So let's kind of dive in a little bit on the last couple of weeks. We had Monaco, obviously crown jewel of the F1 racing schedule. A lot of the drivers make their home from there or make their home there. Charles is from there. I mean, he learned how to swim in that swimming pool at the
yeah,
swimming pool complex. Like
right.
that's how much home it is to Charles Leclerc, and just never been able to put a good race together there, sadly. But the two things that stood out for me over the last 2 weeks is we have had two really good qualifying sessions.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And
Mixed,
it's,
mixed up
yeah.
orders, right? Guys
hmm
out of place, and I think that really lends itself to, oh man, that's really going to give this race a different feel, a different face, just a different energy, right? Like
Yeah.
Charles is coming through the field,
hmm
um, Checo coming through the field. Those type those type moments, and we haven't seen it.
Yeah. It's very true. I mean, like you said, I mean, just the mixed up field, like it really should create such a much better race because you just have those people coming up through the field. But I mean, Monaco just, I just don't really think it's set up for that type of a race. And
Yeah,
just,
Monaco, it's really more on luck, right? It's
yeah,
really on is there a red flag?
Hmm.
or a safety car.
Hmm.
And is there rain? Which we did have some rain towards the end of the race, but the race was already kind of dictated to us. You know, Max was out, had a lead, so no matter what, even if Alonso had come in the first time and put the proper tires on, he still wasn't going to pass Max. And so I think you look at some of those markers in that race to make it a good race, and we've just not seen it.
Yeah, yeah. I think just so much of that's just I keep going back to like just the size of those cars, and on that small Monaco,
Yeah,
track, it's just so hard to get past people, and even on that the one straight that they have, it's just not long enough for really put on a good overtake unless you got somebody that's just kind of limping it through, and so. Yeah, I thought we saw maybe some more overtaking at Monaco than maybe what we have in past years. I don't think I ever saw any data on it as to know for sure. But even at that, I don't think it was really that entertaining of a race. The rain definitely did spice it up a little bit, which was nice. And I mean, you even had some, I think Stroll at one point was just like bouncing around off the barriers and everything a couple times. Were just hitting and sliding, and so it definitely made for what could have shaped up into a very interesting race, but kind of really everybody kind of somewhat held position. I think Ferrari mismanaged a little bit, kind of fell back a little bit. I think the Alpine that maybe kind of capitalized a little bit, and so, but really, kind of like you said, the order was kind of already set just because of how they were running before the rain started. So, yeah.
yeah. And then this past week at the Spanish GP, I told you this in our pre-show discussion. I left to go to church with like 10 laps to go, and I've never even seen the
Hmm.
finish of it. But it just there was you had hoped with Lando being up there, right?
Yeah.
But even he admitted like we're not in contention for the podium.
Hmm.
Like they didn't have the pace, which always kind of surprises me, right? Like you qualify up there, like you've been able to produce it once. Why is it not reproducible?
Mm. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
But um, but yeah, just what were your over? I mean, was there anything that stood out in the race where you, man, that was quality?
Um, yeah, not really. I mean, it was just one of those races where it was just you knew if Max could get to turn one in the lead, like it was kind of just he was going to be gone,
It was over.
and
Yeah,
nobody was really going to be able to catch him and stay with him.
yeah,
It just kind of had that written all over it. I guess maybe the biggest surprise would be how well Mercedes performed. I guess their
yeah. I agree with that.
their race pace was really really good. Kind of surprising too because I think wasn't George Russell like P12 and start didn't even make Q3. I think it was like
Yeah,
P12 or something like that. So
P11, I
for
think.
him to
Yeah,
move all the way up to third, that was definitely a very impressive drive. Um, had some good radio bits as well from him where it was raining in turn five and then it was his
it
sweat.
was really a
So it
sweat.
was like,
Yeah,
yeah, so he's
yeah,
always good for like that one funny like radio message of the day. He
yeah,
always has
yeah,
this.
yeah.
It's just something very
Either
funny.
funny or very like motivating, right?
You're right.
Like I remember at it was last year with who I forgot his name now. His Nicholas Latifi.
Oh, okay.
And Latifi was having a better race, and George prioritize Nikki, right? Like, hey, don't worry about me. Like, make sure that Nikki has a great race. And so yeah, I think George gets a lot of flack for stuff, but I think he's a. It seems like he's a good guy at heart.
Yeah, he just
Yeah.
can be a little bit maybe unawarely funny in how he
Yeah.
phrases some
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
just
Exactly.
makes for good TV. So I think
Makes for
that's why
good
they
TV.
always make sure to put his radio messages up. They're like, "Hey, George has
Exactly.
got a good one.
Probably.
Let's put it on."
Exactly. Exactly. So.
So, question for you, with Barcelona, or Catalonia track, I guess I should say, they changed the last corner, took out a chicane, and kind of made it more of a rounded turn.
Yeah.
What did you think? Did it change any of the
I
racing for
don't.
you? Do you think it added,
I
subtracted?
don't think it did anything. I don't think it did anything.
Yeah, I kind of felt the
Um.
same.
I. I think it's interesting because you're taking out something that's kind of technical, right? Because that
Hmm.
turn of how they did that was kind of technical in getting in, and so, you know, the hopes was to improve passing. I don't know
Hmm.
if it did it, um, but also you're taking out a skill, you know, a part of the track that displays the skill of the drivers to get in and get
Hmm.
out. I think that's where you really, 'cause all these tracks are so flowy now,
Hmm.
and I mean that like the everything is just back and forth, and there's no real hard breaking points, and that's where you see
Yeah.
passing. Like if you really, like even at Monaco,
Hmm.
there was a ton of passes down by Rascasse,
Hmm. Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
you look at those tracks where there's those hard breaking points. That's where you're getting the passing, and that's what they're
Hmm.
taking out of these tracks. I feel like when they design them, they're just these. I don't know. It's just yeah,
Yeah, I mean they're really going that direction with them. I mean, you look at what they've done to Abu Dhabi, and
yeah.
what other ones have they kind of modified? But I mean, even even newer tracks like Zandvoort and stuff like that, where it's just the emphasis on flowiness as opposed
Well,
to like hard
Xanavort's an
braking.
old track. It's got some new bits and elements to it, but it's an
Right.
old track, but newer to the schedule. I think, uh, yeah, I don't know. So there's a designer named Herman Tilke, and he has been one of the major designers for F1 for the last 20 years or so. And that's really when all these new tracks started popping up. They're all Tilke designs. Some of them are not. I don't believe that Austin is Tilke.
It
Um,
is
I
actually.
don't think so.
Yeah,
Is it?
it
Okay.
is. Yes. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you can usually tell his tracks from the design.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then he's probably got people that he's inspired, and now every track is a Tilke design.
Right. Yeah. Well, anything else on the Spanish Grand Prix that you wanted to touch on?
No, there's really not. Like I said, I didn't see the ending of it, but I do have one question for you as we wrap up. So, I want to talk about the ending. Speaking of the ending, and as we head towards the ending, I want to talk about the ending of the Indianapolis 500. Obviously, there was an
Yes.
accident there towards the end, and they decided to red flag the race on with 3 laps to go as they were coming around. And as they
Hmm.
came over the start finish line, it went down to 2 laps to go. And so, meaning that if they were going to take a green flag, they would have to do it on that outlap. I know you're from Indy. You've watched every single Indy 500 since birth. Um, you were conceived in the snake pit.
No, no.
Oh, Oh, okay. My bad. Um, but how was your, especially when we look back at 2 years ago, the ending of the F1 race where no,
Mhm.
Michael, no, Michael, you know, what is your thoughts on that ending of the, was it manufactured?
Um, no, not manufactured. I would say no to that. So I think it is important to discuss what the accident that brought out the last red flag. It was on the restart that the accident happened and the yellow flag came out. Newgarden was leading, and Ericsson had just passed him right as they popped the yellow out. They didn't even make it into turn one. Not to take anything away from Ericsson, obviously he won it last year, but I do kind of feel like just as easily as it, it's one of those things that it's it's the gift and the curse of having that opportunity to make that decision because if you make the decision to do what they did and go one lap green, then it's manufactured. But I could make the same exact argument if they had just red flagged it and then only did two yellow to at the end of the day they're making the decision on to finish the race a certain way. So that's why I don't say that's manufactured. I don't know if it's the I would say that I do think that Ericsson in P1 with one lap to go, I would rather be in second place. I think virtually any IndyCar
Yeah.
driver would say the exact same thing. They'd rather be P2 than P1 in that situation. So I do feel bad for him in that sense that there really wasn't an opportunity to defend that in a sense. Like you just kind of have to hope that Newgarden misses a corner somewhat, and isn't able to get out of turn two the way that he was able to. And so if you want to say it's manufactured, then I would have to say you would or have to say the exact same thing that it was manufactured if they had just, you know, finished it under yellow. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's it. It's one of those things like it's the gift and the curse of it, and it depends on which side you fall. Also, it is worth noting that Roger Penske is the owner of Joseph Newgarden's car, and he does own the track. So I think that also kind of adds some, conspiracy flames to it. But I don't
He
know. I
also
think
owns
it,
the series as well.
right. Yeah. 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 So, all right. Just any time that, Penske wins, are we just going to start, putting on our tinfoil
Man.
hats and, so I don't know. If that's how you think that the IndyCar goes, not you, Patrick. I know you don't, but like if you're a fan and you're like, oh, this is just rigged, like then don't watch it. Like it's not for
Yeah.
you, I guess. So spend your
Yeah.
time and energy somewhere else. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts. I don't know what did you think of it, Patrick?
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought it was exciting, right? I mean, one lap
Yeah,
shootout.
yeah,
And really it was down to, it was obviously down to Ericsson, Newgarden, and potentially Ferrucci, which I thought he
Ferrucci.
had a
Yeah.
great
Oh
race.
man.
Really, I was really hoping he could. I was really hoping the two front leaders would take themselves out and let Ferrucci come through for the win, but unfortunately, it didn't happen. But
Yeah.
yeah, I thought he had a great race. But no,
Hmm.
yeah, no, I thought it was a great ending. I'd like to see. Hey, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to the beauty of sport and just I think
Hmm.
I think a racer's racer would want, yeah, let's go out. Let's do it.
And that's true too. Yeah.
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 So, well, man, let's go out on that note.
Yeah.
Let's go out on that high note talking about the Indy 500. That was a great race, and we've seen great racing in the IndyCar series this year,
Yeah.
unlike what we've seen in the F1 season.
Yeah, everything you hate about F1, you might really like about IndyCar.
You might like
I'll
about
just
IndyCar.
just say
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. Well, on that note, we will say, as we always do, keep your wheels pointed in the right direction. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening.